Welcome back after lunch. I can see we've lost a few audience members. I assume everyone went to have a nap, but I'm sure people will come in just now as well. And we also have people joining us online. So welcome to the final session of the day, the final panel session. It'll be facilitated by our very own Dalibhunga. She will introduce the speakers to you. And wait, I had one more point. I've forgotten what it was. So yeah, let me just hand over. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jenny. Good afternoon, everyone. Molweni. I hope the people who are not here, it's not a matter of machis vol oges do, right? I hope so. I hope they'll join us. So molweni, good afternoon. Those who are visiting Nelson Mandela University, namkelekile eGqeberha, welcome to our university. So, as introduced, my name is Dalibhunga, and I've been here since this morning, like many of you. I did prepare a set of questions, but the two panels before me, like the registrar, my mind is just going in all directions, but luckily, I'm facilitating a panel. So I'm going to introduce my panel members. Each of them have 10 minutes for provocation. It is the youngest panel of the day. Yeah. We have students, we have lecturers, but they're all young, and I'm including myself in the young in there. So before I introduce the panelists, Nelson Mandela University is 8 years and 20 days old today. Some of you were here when we changed the name from Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University in 2017 in July. Now, if you ask ChatGPT, young panel, you know, we have to use AI. When you were 8 years old, what are the things and the questions that you grappled with? Why is the sky blue? Why do some people have more than others? Where was I born and where was I before I was born? Why did my friend stop talking to me? So think of you as an 8-year-old, the young panel in front of you. As they provoke you with what the brief they've been given, embedding Mandela, making good trouble, good in italics. We have young people in the room. We have an SRC president. Elections are coming up. Just saying. So, Ritumetsi Malifane. Ritumetsi is a lecturer in architectural technology. And he's prepared a presentation for us that is going to talk about decolonizing architecture. And as a young black man at Nelson Mandela University in 2025, he'll also touch on his experiences in the classroom. Next to him, we have, when he introduces himself, he says, there's no one else who has the title president in the university. Latita Mbuzwana, the 2025 SRC president. I'm hoping that Latita will also talk about his term as it's coming to an end as an SRC president in Nelson Mandela University in 2025. If we go to the panel before lunch, what's in the name, as the discussion document says, and what does it mean to carry this name as the SRC president? Next to Latita, we have Snetezekile Mbanza, who is a postgrad student doing her master's. A topic is the sociology of violence in higher education institutions. The sociology of violence in higher education institutions. So what does it mean to do that research at Nelson Mandela University as a female in 2025 with the violence in the universities in South Africa and in our country? Lastly, I asked her, were you in the area? She says, Vuyo kaloku ndiyateacher. Kama Noveve, who's a PhD candidate, lecturer in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology. I said to her, I'm so happy to meet you because I quoted one of your articles in my proposal research. So I'm going to mention again, it's young people. So I think we are going to DVC hear what young people's experiences provocate in this kind of conversation at Mandela. And maybe, Prof. Harris, as we hear them, we link back to when we launched the Transdisciplinary Institute of Mandela Studies. Because obviously we launched, and then is the experience as we intended. So these are the things that I want us to have at the back of our minds. I'll give to Dumi. And your 10 minutes starts now.
Testing 1, 2. Good afternoon all. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. I want to share with you my story at least. From a student right now to a lecturer, in how I've been in awe of just the story of this institution, and it's growth. Now, context is really important, and for me, what's fascinating about this institution is just the gradual growth of what we've known as University of Port Elizabeth, which comes of brutalist, this post-war harsh material, and just through the times as how the name changed, how it has been reflected in the spatial transformation throughout the city. And I think there's no other campus in South Africa that actually does narrate the story none other than Nelson Mandela University. And I always tell students when I'm actually at VP, you don't want to go to any other institution, you want to be here. And I can tell you for a fact that in my class, as it is, I think I only have 3 people from the Eastern Cape. Others are just from all over South Africa. And it's actually it's a nice blessing, I must say, just to take them through this story and through the engagement in which we are trying to grapple with this question of embedding Mandela. Now, to glean from what Professor Keith said earlier on, legacy is not a static inheritance. And it does kind of come and tie in well with Lang, who frames architecture as a form of non-verbal storytelling, in which means, in our context, our story is forever evolving from UPE, the emergence with the Technicon, and now 2017, when I was a student doing my master's, and I questioned, but why the name change? Just 2 colors. But then only after time I could make sense, it's a brand. And it's a very powerful brand that is very consistent, that's, you can see it's taken shape of a new architectural language for higher institutions. So the spatial transformation of institution, it really gears itself towards a civic institution, where the spatial transformation, as we know from the early days, it did expand outwards towards your Central, 2nd Avenue. But I think what's, for me, is even more evidence of really social justice and really reaching communities in which I think we are striving to really tap into, is more the northern areas. And more in the outer skirts of communities where there have been, what's the right word to use, architecturally, structurally divided with intention. So this is a really great institution from our side towards how it gears up towards a civic university. Now I want, and my thing here was just to make trouble, you know, now that I've actually shaped the vision of Mandela itself, I really want to make trouble here, because for me, I wanted to kind of provoke the VCs, DVCs, around with me what I found is a trouble here. And I think this is actually gleaned from, and I've been engaging a lot with the engagement office, Dr. Bruce, and this diagram on the right came out. And for me, I can go back to 2011 when I was a student. I cannot tell you what was a 2020 vision, I forgot. Even now, I can make some sense of some words, but something that has been an anchor for me in how I have framed my approach through pedagogy in the service of society. That's our core mandate, yeah. And I wanted to be very funny with these imagery. So the first one on the left, top left, is young Mandela. And I saw a very funny tweet referencing, when they actually troll and they shared this one and said, this is Tate Dalibhunga's record a few weeks back. And for me, and I think there's something I think we're missing with this as well, because he had a fighting record, but there's something I think this young culture, this young generation is missing around persistence and just, despite of losing, stepping back in the ring. And that is something I could say of a figure of this young Mandela. And of course, going through wisdom and times, knowing the game, the struggle of life is fought smartly, I suppose. So yeah, so this really provides, at least for me, what starts to center myself as a lecturer as to my approach within my activities. Now, this is another fight I want to make. And I brought out this map, because of course and I think I'm going to touch on a lot of things on this particular map, because this one is something that really hurts me a lot. And for me, number one, I hate the talk, the discussion around just that the Eastern Cape is the poorest province in South Africa. That's the farthest from the truth. Both my grandparents are actually from Eastern Cape. Well, they're both buried in Eastern Cape. One set is outside Debe, outside Timbaza. The other one is in Stegspruit. So I have a good sense of the Eastern Cape. And I think through working, going to different sites around Tomo, Tata, across the board. And I was with this older colleague of mine, and he used to just tell me about this image, about how back in the 70s, 80s, that there were factories for days that could feed communities throughout the province. And for me, I look at what at least a civic university should actually hold itself to empower the region itself. There's no way, colleagues, that we have this issue. And I'll speak from our perspective within the architecture profession, whereby we have graduates that cannot find work. And for me, I seek to actually take this challenge with my students last year. The class, listen, yeah, we have this issue. We have these sites. We have these industrial hubs throughout the province of Eastern Cape that once was a powerhouse, now is just a shell of itself. And I need you to tap in to revitalize strategically each particular region. So that actually brought us to the project last year around making the past productive, in which we actually focused on key strategic areas around the region, Tata, Timbaza, Goa, Komani, and just for each group, just to tap into the problem at hand, we have the sites. And through your intervention, yeah, how can you revitalize the region in a way in which you can start to develop a brown site circular economy. Sorry, I just got a shock there. So that's just the attitude. And I think moving forward, I've taken this approach whereby we need to be more flexible. Another example over here of just really how we're working with multiple NGOs throughout the province, through different daycare centers and schools, really shaped off something that just comes out of nowhere from Dr. Bruce and so forth. I'm actually brushing myself. Okay, we've touched on this before. And as well, just also really not only actually focusing on these strategic regions, but also actually looking at architecture itself. Really focusing on these subjugative narratives of construction itself. But class, colleagues, that's all that I have. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Ritumetse. It's fine. We're a class, don't worry. We're learning. I think what we're talking about also ties into what DVC Teaching and Learning, Dr. Mweng talked about, in how do we embed this concept of Mandela in the academy. I think we've seen that, and I'm happy to see it's our feature because that's where I'm from. Yeah. I mean, where you from, DVC again? It always features, so I'm glad it was there. Over to you, Latita.
All right, thank you very much. Perhaps DVC Teaching and Learning can assist me in this regard. Two scholars are arguing. One says you can say protocol observed and not outline your protocol. But the other one says, no, in actual fact, when you say protocol observed, you must be able to say this is my protocol. But I'll just opt for the other scholar that says all protocol observed. When we speak, when we talk about embedding Mandela across the university, we're talking about something that's far deeper than symbols, names, or annual commemorations. We're talking about living his values every day, in every lecture hall, in every residence, in every student society. Mandela stood for justice, dignity, service, resilience, and unity. If we're serious about embedding his legacy, then these values must move from the pages of history into the lived realities of our students on the ground. My theme was to speak about embedding Mandela, but also as an SRC president. But perhaps as a point of departure, I may say, my presidency was characterized of responding to student issues on the ground. And perhaps points for discussion could be making Mandela's values tangible. 1, infusing Mandela into the curriculum. 3, transforming campus culture. 4, strengthening community engagement. 5, leadership development. And lastly, institutional accountability. And the first point, when we speak about making values of Mandela tangible, which are integrity, Ubuntu, resilience, and equality, we're saying that these values must not only be said, or we must not be told about these values, but when you go to a student and you hear that they have an issue, because we're carrying a big responsibility of his name. When you deal with the issues of students, you must therefore be able to have integrity, to have Ubuntu, and resonate with the students on that ground. And that's how we characterize making his values tangible on the ground. But perhaps if we may make these things practical, currently we have an ongoing fight with the university to say there are unfunded students that didn't have funding. But let's find ways on how we can resolve this issue. And that's how Mandela was. That's who Mandela is, that he stood for what is right, but also aligned himself with fighting for the right thing in the right way. And that's why perhaps now the fight is still ongoing. Infusing Mandela into the curriculum. Encourage all faculties to integrate ethics, social justice, and leadership into the courses. Use Mandela's approach to problem solving as a teaching method in various disciplines. Promote research and projects that address pressing social and economic issues in our country. For example, we must be able to produce engineering students that can design affordable water systems for rural areas, applying technical knowledge through the lens of responsibility. And currently we have faculty reps for the first time in each and every faculty who are raising funds within the faculty through students who have means to support the food security problem that we have in our university. And that's what we live for, to have the weight of Mandela. Transforming campus culture, when we speak about this, of transforming campus culture, we are saying, build a campus environment where diversity is not celebrated on certain occasions, but is celebrated daily. It must be a daily thing. Promote multilingualism and cultural inclusion so that no student feels left behind. Create platforms for ongoing dialogue about inequality, identity, and national healing. Currently, we have a system called Help a Sister, which seeks to help unfunded students who don't have the means to ensure that they get the basic needs. And that's us embedding Mandela across the university. We have a meal a day that's currently happening, where students are being fed on a daily basis, where we go out and engage strategic stakeholders within our community to ensure that they assist in this regard. When we speak about strengthening community engagement, we're speaking about Mandela that believed in education that is a tool for changing society, not just an individual's life. For example, recently, I'm from CriSHET, by the way. Die mense wat hier is, ken CriSHET, kom van die Karoo. So in CriSHET, there are many township schools that are underprivileged to access of higher education. I recently launched a program called Makufundwe, which means everyone must be educated or must go to school. And through the department, assistance of the Department of Basic Education and other strategic partners, we launched that campaign. Students have access now to apply for anything. And that was my initiative. And that's how we must be able, when we're in positions of power, to go back and contribute to where we come from. And that's us embedding our Mandela across the campus, or actually across where we are. Leadership development. We don't want to create SRC members here that cannot be able to articulate themselves when they are in a policy changing tables. Because we must be able to go like those who came before us. And picket, they call it in my party, they call it picket, not strike. We must be able to go and picket, but also be able to come back on the table and say, this is how we proposed this issue should be dealt with. Not only go there, when you come back, you are called for a meeting, you can't actually articulate yourself for what you want. And that's a problem, perhaps. Fees must fall. That's another topic, or another conversation, by the way, that they lacked before. But that's what we are trying to correct. Lastly, institutional accountability. We have to hold the university accountable to its own values and promises. Ensure financial aid system, admissions policies, and campus facilities reflect equity and fairness. Continuously measure whether our institutional culture matches the spirit of Mandela. Embedding Mandela in our university is not about perfection. It's about intention and action. It is about committing as students, academics, and administrators to make our university a place where justice is lived, dignity is upheld, and every graduate lives not just with knowledge, but with the courage to serve. In conclusion, Mandela quotes, "What counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is the difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we lead." Close quote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President.
DVC is leaving when Sine is about to speak.
Thank you, DVC. So what sits with me is holding the institution to account. It's like holding a mirror to the university to reflect on itself. I'm wondering who does that for the SRC. Just as I sit here. Aye. Snethezekile.
Sanibonani. Yo. All protocol observed. I'm going to piggyback on Latita's greeting. And yeah, but now I don't know where to start, because I think I'm having too many conversations in my head. But the brief said that I need to speak about the work that I do, and how I see the values of Utata in the work that I do. And just to start off, I think just coming from Latita's points, It gives me great joy to hear that the 1 meal a day is still continuing, because I like to believe it was an initiative started by us, where we thought of the unfunded students and we thought of Ubuntu. Umuntu ngabantu. I think it's a saying that goes across most Nguni languages. And with that initiative, we were just trying to make sure that people who do not have funding are catered for. And of course, maybe the logistics at the time didn't agree with us to cook every day for students, but then almost on a monthly basis, students then would get groceries, and then the female students would also be catered for with getting sanitary towels and pads. So that's it's good that it's continuing. And now getting into the work that I do. So my master's dissertation is on the makings of the sociology of violence, and I'm looking at violence in higher education spaces. And the earlier panel spoke about making trouble. And I want us to look into the academic expression of Mandela in the context of violence against women and gender-based violence in South Africa. And I take it to institutions specifically because I think in the past years we've seen that we've had quite a number of cases that make it to the internet, to social media, and we're all have to be running people, hashtag this, hashtag that. And we've had in institutions inside residences where female students have either been stabbed or they've been shot by people that they're close to. So now, what would Utata expect a university that has his name in dealing with issues like that? There has already been work that has been done by the university. NMU has the most inclusive sexual harassment and discrimination policy across board. I went through all the policies for the 26 universities, and most of them, even in the end, they do attribute and they reference that they used NMU's policy to actually write their own policies. But even with that, where do we take it to? So in my dissertation, there's a part where I go through all of the 5 cases. So I have Xolile Mbatha from MUT, I have Zolile Khumalo from MUT, I have Nosicelo Mtebeni from East London, and then I have Zimkhitha from NMU George Campus. Zimkhitha's one is very recent, and it's the last case that we kind of saw make rounds. She was stabbed multiple number of times inside her residence at George Campus. So now it makes me ask myself that NMU as a university that has such an inclusive policy, what are we doing to lead the discussions towards policy reform and policy implementation? We are 4 years until 2030 of the Vision 2030. And it's not I don't want it to sound like a cliche all the time to say, but good things are happening in other departments and in other initiatives in the university. But the violence space, specifically violence against women, that space seems to be neglected. Because if ever we have such an inclusive policy, then why can't things like a gendered perspective of violence, gendered violence? The 2024 report from the Ministerial Task Team said that universities need to look at the gendered violence that is shaped by gender, simply gender. So we always want to look at violence as a broader perspective when we want to speak about GBV, and people are like, yeah, but there are criminals as well, people are being robbed, but specifically gendered violence. So maybe in the next 4 years, as an institution, we need to lead the discussions in policy implementation and in policy reform. The Transformation Office, if you check your memo, the Transformation Office have been really trying to push inclusive work. The Center for Women and Gender Studies have also been trying to push inclusive work, but it seems as if we're working in isolation because this part of the conversation is just that part of the conversation. We all want to come together and critique, they're not leading well at this time, but we never come together and speak about Are we actually in a safe space? What can we do? There are sexist ideals, there are sexist conversations that we have on a daily. When you're having coffee outside, you know, we don't hold each other accountable, but we're in the institution that has Data's name. So I just basically wanted to talk on that and like a call to action that even our VC was chairing the committee that had vice chancellors that were speaking on this issue. Prof. Makokwana, Prof. Gola were a part of the people who also contributed into these reports. So we are making strides in the community, but it seems as if I think we just send out our best and then we stay behind as an institution and then we don't speak about these things. Thank you. My time up.
Thank you, Snitazagile. How do we make trouble in the sector, Prof. Kiet, with the rich resources in this kind of work that we have as a university? I saw Dr. Levendal earlier here. And so how do we clean house? Snitazagile is asking. How do we clean house? Kama?
Yeah. Oh. I picked up very important points from the latter speakers, and I think the first speaker spoke about, despite losing, stepping back into the ring. And the second speaker spoke about articulation and dignity. And he spoke about service, humility, and infusing Mandela into the curriculum. But I think it becomes abstract at some point, because how does all of this translate to the day-to-day? Can we really articulate that? And I'm going to use my own experience to try and shed a little bit of light into that, but also some interesting insights from my own study that I did on gender transformation here at this university. And it really gave me a different perspective into how people practice Mandela on a daily basis, particularly in the lecture halls, because I think we sometimes forget, because now we are in this neoliberal, university, and we sometimes forget the importance of why universities exist. And they exist because they teach. And it's really quite unfortunate that teaching as practice and as a space of knowledge creation is really not, doesn't have the same symbolic value that would accrue to a research profile. So one of the values of the university is mutual vulnerability. And how do we then practice mutual vulnerability, that versus credibility? And in a life-squeezing environment where we are incessantly obsessed with production, it sucks the life out of people. There's an alienating effect to that, because with being an academic in particular, there needs to be some form of enjoyment. And there needs to be some form of value that you attach to what it is that you do. But if you are incessantly focused on production, you go back to being disembodied. And like I said, selfhood sometimes, if you center selfhood, maybe you might put your credibility at risk. And unfortunately, that's where the humanizing praxis is, unfortunately, or well, fortunately. And I think, starting with the curriculum, I'm just going to give a few examples about what I do in my classroom. And I think, fortunately enough, I'm a sociologist. So sociology, we study everything. And And I think part of the ways in which we can connect with the students is to talk a language that they understand. Even if that language is in English, for instance, you could connect the concepts that you're trying to explain with the day-to-day reality that people are living. Because sometimes the concepts become abstract. Knowledge becomes exactly just that if students don't know what to do with it. So it's very important on the part of the person that is transmitting that knowledge to be able to connect the narrative or the concept that you are teaching to the real life experience of the people that you are teaching, because they need to understand that they are part of the society that you are trying to understand. And I also believe that I was actually, it has upset me, this thing, and I've been thinking about it, and in my experiences of, short experience of teaching, when you walk into the classroom, and I think, students meet you for the first time, you think, okay, maybe they're not speaking because, they're seeing someone new, they don't know this person. But I found that students are passive. And it's possible that it's not that they want to be passive. I don't believe that there's anybody that comes into the university to just be passive. But it is because they come with their own experiences into the university. And I think the hard work starts with us as teachers, understanding that experience. Why are students resenting verbal contributions in class? Why? I believe everybody can speak. People talk with their friends there, they talk with their family. But why is it that students fear judgment from others? They fear, oh, maybe what they're going to say is stupid or it's not important. It's because of the silencing effect that they have inherited from the basic education system. And I feel that as a university, one of the ways that we can contribute in embedding the name of Utata is embodied care. And for you to care for or to care about, you have to know about. So I know care is gendered, of course, but everybody has the ability to care. And if we let go of that part of being a human being, then I don't know what it is that we really are doing. I've heard many people talk about, I know we're in the neoliberal STEM kind of, the importance of STEM disciplines, and to, unfortunately, the devaluation of the humanities. And I think it's because of disciplines like sociology that question the knowledge project in its entirety and the practices that go into teaching. We usually focus on technique and strategies. But what about the quality of teaching? Because we're always constrained with the normative and often narrow definition of teaching excellence. So I think it's important that we also start to redefine and do the work as teachers to make a contribution to our students so that when they graduate, they don't just graduate with a piece of paper where they can sell their skill or they can sell their labor, but it is indeed a service to society to change lives. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to remind you that this is the contributions of the youngest panel of the day. So come, I'm hearing decenter, recenter, decenter. The word that goes around, I think Judy also mentioned it, you guys are also young. You also want to be young or 6 kind of thing, But I'm also brought into what Tusneti Zekele was talking about. How do we center the work of the university, out there? Because, as you mentioned, our policies are quoted everywhere else. But Dumi, small contribution, Jake, what does a ring look like? If you're talking about fight the ring, what does the ring look like in 2025 before we open it up to the audience for discussion?
Courage for me. Courage to face what you need to face. That's it for me in how our frame rings. The ring is actually, and you can also bring it down to having the courage to actually take a particular design decision, based on what you do know of the context and go for it. So just courage in your abilities, and despite our failure, we all failure. No. It's part of life. But I think for me, what I try to bring out of my students is that it's okay to fail. It's part of experience, but we all here to learn. Me as well as a lecturer. We're all learning here, so that's it.
Latita, the VC often talks about the posture when you're carrying the name. And she made an example in a meeting recently where those who grew up in the rural areas will remember that nyanda, the collection of sticks and you carry in your head, your posture changes in how you carry. Okanye a bucket of water, your posture changes when you're carrying that bucket of water, because you need to bring it to be used in the home, either to make fire, to cook, or to quench thirst, right? So your posture changes in how you're carrying this name, in how you carry the water, the wood, because it's in service of society. 2025 SRC generally, would you say, okay, give advice to the incoming 2026 SRC president in how to carry the name with the social issues that you guys grappled with this year, with holding the institution, like holding a mirror into the institution back to itself? How would you say they should carry the name Nelson Mandela?
All right, thank you very much. I think the point of departure to that is remain humble. When you're SRC president, you have access to anything in the institution. You have access to anyone in the institution. But those around me can tell you that what kept me going, and an advice to an incoming SRC president, is that your people on the ground should always be your people. Never get a big head. And I think that's what got me throughout. And if you can trace my presidency, I would go to an extent of going to Lady Frey to bury a student, because this responsibility was about servicing the students on the ground. Thank you.
Snetezagile, you're a former SRC SG, ne? 2 terms.
Yes.
There's a debate currently going on that the fiber of student activism, ne? As a former SRC member, just generally, because obviously you've interacted with universities, not only our university, but carrying the name cap and what it holds in South Africa, in the world. Are we going back? Are we going forward?
I think that comment that usually a senior cadres say in the movement is actually very unfair, because we are leading at different times. The issues that we led under are not the same issues that they are leading under. I think we're basically, I think people who say that are basically trying to, how do I say this? But they're trying to make it look like there is one template for leadership throughout. And also, currently right now, our issues, I think before the issue was, let's say before Fees Must Fall, the issue was, NSFAS was a bursary. NSFAS became, NSFAS was alone. NSFAS became alone after that. So the leadership that was leading the protest when NSFAS was alone is not the same leadership that was leading after the Fees Must Fall. Now, the issues that come with NSFAS being a bursary are different, right? Also, currently, things are not as what they seem. That is the biggest problem we have. We sit and we talk and we discuss and we are very passionate in our speaking. We are passionate when we are crafting the discussion documents. But execution level, it's not the same. But now we want to blame the people who are in the ring, who are in the arena at the execution level, just because we have this one view of it. So I think it's very unfair. I'm not defending Latita in any way, but I just think that we lead at really different times. Unless what you're complaining about really comes from a fact that, okay, this person is not working. But I think we just have different ways of executing things. Yeah, that's what I think.
Thank you. Come up before we go to the audience. Care for, care about, to what Snetezekile was talking about. Let's move it from here to what does that look like in your classroom in 2025? A child wakutsolo who has never seen a computer, who has only heard English on TV, and they must pass.
There we go. Yes. Yeah, I think just to go back to what you said in the beginning about Inyanda. Inyanda's heavy. Okay? It's the same thing like teaching. It's heavy. It is mentally, physically, intellectually exhausting. Lanyanda is the women that have that nyanda in the classrooms, that have to put 500 of them on your head, and you hope that at some point you don't drop one of them. But because the ratio is 500 to 1, it's inevitable that you will drop some of them. So immediacy is very important, and I think particularly, I'm just gonna say this outright. Because I'm a black person and I'm a woman, I know how it feels like to be another person or to be an afterthought. Just the same way that those kids that come from the rural areas or formerly disadvantaged areas often become like an afterthought in the classroom, you know, because access to the language, access to academic literacies, access to, you know, there's a level of understanding, you know, of cognitive understanding that a student must have reached for us to move forward in the curriculum. So I think one of the best ways is for me to make them understand that it's a systematic thing. It's not their fault. It's not because they're inadequate. That builds dignity. That builds confidence in the student. That I'm not like this because I come from Utsolo, but there's a reason why Utsolo is where it is. And we find the things that we find in Utsolo, the way that they are.
Thank you very much. Over to you, ladies and gentlemen. I'll take a first round, and we'll come back. I'm seeing 5 hands. Of course, we'll start with you. Can I have a mic, please? Yes. Thank you. Oh, you can start and then we'll come to you. Name, please introduce yourself.
Check, is this working? Okay, yeah. Hi, I'm Alyssa. I'm a graduate I'm a graduate who has spent some time in computer science and accounting modules. I was hoping to ask Ms. Noveve about the following, to comment about the following. I've heard claims that our education system was formed in the 1800s to basically train children to be compliant factory workers, and that not much has changed since then. I was hoping to ask you if you can comment on that for me, please.
Thank you very much. So, Kama, please note that question. Okay, we'll come back to you. Next hand. And please introduce and then who you're directing to, or you directing to the whole panel. Thanks.
No, to the SRC president. Okay. My name is Tulan. I want to direct this question to Mr. Latit. I don't know if you've noticed, under Mandela, who was a socialist, the country made social progress. Under Mbeki, who was an economist, the country made economic progress. I remember this clearly because in 2004, you could buy $1 for 7 rands. That was the time we had Olympics in Greece. Under Ramaphosa, who's an entrepreneur, the country is making entrepreneurial progress, and we can look examples of that in the formation of things like BRICS. So the question that I have to you, I'm not going to mention Zuma. Sorry, I don't have the time, sorry. I have to keep the question short. So my question is, do you perhaps see a president coming from the STEM field? Because these people are not engineers or technologists or manufacturers. Do you see a president in future coming from the STEM? Because the country is investing a lot in that sector. So if a president should come from the STEM field, maybe we could make engineering progress. That's the question I have. Thanks.
Thank you. We note the time constraints when you skipped the other president. Third question, please. Latita, you noted that, ne?
Good day, you all. My name is Piki Sosiseko. I'm a PA student. I'm going to ask you, President. One of the speakers talked about saying that Nelson Mandela was the epitome of Ubuntu. And I feel like in this generation we are failing Tatu Matiba. I will speak on behalf of students. There are students that are degrading other people's courses, saying that I'm better than, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm what, you know. So those make other students invalidate about themselves. Not all of us we're going to be doctors, civil engineers. Others are made to be Abom Kwanazi, exposing these corruptions that are happening in this country. You know. Secondly, President, there's also other students here in NMU laughing other students that shall stop, making other students can't get out of their rooms, making other students that I can't go to class because these students is laughing at me, making me shy and stuff like that. So as much as we emphasize that education can, which Mandela said that education is the powerful weapon that we can use to change the world, but we can also ubuntu in isiXhosa city asifuni bantu bafundileyo sifuna abantu abafundisekileyo. Thank you.
Sure. We're not looking for people who went to class. We're looking for people who are bafundisekile. Because educated is going to not yeah. Fourth question, and then we'll come back to you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much once again. Yeah, my name is Boyinkosi Shong. No, I have 2 quick questions. The first one, and anyone can respond to it, and then the second one is specific to Mrs. Netezegin. I mean, I just want to ask firstly that, you know, there is a scholar, Nguki Wationgo, and he says that he speaks about the importance of African languages in imagining and crafting the society that we want to craft, that does not have poverty, that does not have inequality and all these issues. So I want to ask, in this work of, you know, trying to imagine the world through Nelson Mandela, where do we locate the role of African languages, understanding that to speak a language is not just a question of communication, but embodies the histories, the knowledges, and the values and, you know, knowledge systems of a particular people. So I want to ask that question firstly. The second one, Ms. Netezegile, Frantz Fanon says that decolonization is a violent phenomenon. And I think you said that your studies touch on violence in higher education. So I want to ask you, what do you make of this statement or this conceptualization of violence by Fanon in today's situations? Thank you very much.
Thank you. And a mic to you to ask the last question. Questions Zen. I'm glad I'm not the one who has to answer.
I'm Diane. My question is for Kama. I was wondering, you spoke a lot about how students can become or feel disengaged in the classroom, right? And I think a lot of that stems from a fear of how they might sound. You know, perhaps they have an accent or they don't know the words that are these long, fanciful words, right? And I think that sometimes this is reinforced when lecturers oftentimes speak like researchers instead of as teachers, right? So there can be this disconnect between lecturer and student, right? Where sometimes they forget that they're not speaking to a room full of experts or a room full of future experts. They're speaking to students who are still in the process of learning. So I'd like you to speak on the balance between a high standard of education versus student understanding and how lecturers need to understand and then enforce that in their own classrooms.
Thank you very much. I'm also going to ask Utumi to also reflect on that Fanon question in the context of decolonization. Okay, Kama, questions 1 and 5.
I think your question, I'm going to just merge it with the gentleman over there. Yes, the colonial education system was not made for black people in South Africa. And of course, it goes back to the stripping away of the literatures, the histories, the heritage, the theft, and all of that. It's part of the colonial process, okay? And the type of education, I actually made an example in my classroom last week. I said, why is it that what your mother taught you maybe when you were 10, like a recipe, maybe how to make amagwinya or something, you have not forgotten that. You can make amagwinya like in your sleep. You can make amagwinya in 5 years' time without looking at any book, without nothing. Now, I ask them, do they remember what they learned at matric? They don't. Why is that? Because when your mother was teaching you how to make amagwinya, they did not write anything. There were no words. As Africans, orature has been our great gift. Orature, speaking. This thing of written word and text and all of that, it came with colonialism. Now, we are teaching students in written words, books, all of that. That's why they don't remember anything, because we are disconnected from ourselves. That is the reason why the current education system has these loopholes, because it's disconnected from the people that are the consumers of that particular knowledge. But again, to the second question, I think for students to be able to relate more, you must also always emphasize that you're also learning. There is never anybody that knows everything. I don't know everything. I probably will never know everything. So it comes from that departure point and that open admission that the reason why I sometimes have to beg for engagement because I'm also learning from them. I don't know everything that they know. So also learning from failure. I also fail. I've failed many times. They need to know that. They can't look at me and think, oh, I've never failed. I've never, sometimes I do speak broken English because English is not my mother tongue. I do. And sometimes I say to them, speak broken English to me. I will understand you. Because if a person is speaking broken English, they are a master of another language. That's what it means. So I try to restore dignity in that way, some form of pride, some form of identity. I know I'm not going to be able to do that in a short period of time that I have with students, but it doesn't mean that we must stop trying. We must always try. If the student comes into my classroom, they can't walk out the same. They can't walk out thinking the same way that they were thinking before they met me. So I said, even if there's 500 of them, if I can convince 5 of them of the arguments that I persuade them to subscribe to, then I think I would have done my job. Thanks.
Thank you, Karma. Snetezegile, your questions?
Decolonization is a violent phenomenon. Shonga's question, what do you make of this statement? I think violence, the violence that he was talking about in this context was violence that we now deem as acceptable, because it was at a time where he speaks about violence of the state, violence in politics. I think it's Karl Marx as well who said that for us to take back the means of production, we have to do it violently. And I don't think they meant it in a way of then us wearing that violence even towards people who are defenseless. Because the violence against women and children is different from the big violence. I think in sociology we call it the big violence. There's a book called The Denial of Violence. And it differentiates between these different perspectives, where this violence that we have used, that Nelson Mandela and his people used to fight for our freedom, is not the same violence that women and children suffer in the home behind closed doors, right? Because they're defenseless. You know, the apartheid system had its own tools and mechanisms to defend themselves when black people were fighting against them. Women don't, you know? And it also, thank you for mentioning that, because it also just goes to show how then doing violent studies and doing feminist studies in this kind of society that is so masculine and so patriarchal, right? And it's not the same, the violence that we portray when we're closing down boom gates is not the same violence that we're supposed to be portraying towards each other, especially for defenseless. So I think that's what I make of it. And then your second question was on the importance of African languages, Ngungiwa. There's a little initiative that we try here at CriSHET. We have something called the Madiba's Reading Group, and then now we have something called the Madiba's Reading Group in conversation with, right? Because at the heart of the Vision 2030 is decolonization. And decolonization says that the university must respond to the students that come in. So what we do is that at the Madiba's Reading Group, we come together and we read articles, academic journal articles that are based on social justice, right? And we try that together as a group of 15 people. What do you make of this article? What do you think they're saying? So in us trying to converse about these journal articles together as students, in a way, we also allow ourselves to even speak about it in your own language. It's fine, you know, just tell us what you think about this paragraph in your own language. Then also it encourages students to also engage. And then now in conversation with session, we invite academics in the university who have published journal articles. We invite them to say, we'd like to have a conversation with you regarding your paper. So now you don't just write journal articles and publish them and then they just stay there and then you just say, oh yes, I've published 5, published 6. We want to know, what are you saying? Why did you say it? And also then that means that this scholarship is going to the ground. And the more the scholarship goes into the ground, the more we're going to be able to speak about it in also our African languages. So I think that's what we're just trying to do in our small corner of embedding Mandela. Thank you.
Thank you, Snetezegile. Latita, I think you've got 2 questions, 2 and 3.
All right, thank you very much. My brother there, I'm going to first respond to your question. You spoke about Mandela, Mbeki, and Ramza, but you forgot the 9 wasted years. Anyways, do I believe that there will ever be a president who will come from the stem? Politics or the political landscape currently in South Africa is a highly contested space. Gone are the days where the former liberation movement used to go to parliament and do as they please. Now there's something that one could refer to as the JNU, where many parties are part of it. And now, and many student leaders, by the way, who are contributing to parliament from these portfolios that we have now, go to parliament, and it's no longer a thing of cadre deployment where you get there because you struggled. It's about merit now. The political landscape is changing day after day. And I do hope that we'll have someday someone who will come and rise and run this country from the stem, so that perhaps other decisions that we take as a country can impact us in a positive way. I hope I've responded to that. Number two was 2 questions from my brother's side, where he spoke about the degrading of courses and the students at shuttle stops that are being told a lot of crap there. With the degrading of courses, one needs to understand that we have different abilities as students. It's true that you are saying we won't be able to be all doctors, lawyers, etc. Some of us need to do actually a higher certificate in criminal justice, you know. That's just part of life. But how then do we ensure that the community or the university community is conducive for everyone? And when I spoke about my points, I spoke about infusing Mandela into the campus and transforming campus culture. We have initiatives that are currently taking place in the university, which I think must be advertised to everyone, which are the Ebuhlanti for young boys that's currently taking place through SGD, where young boys are grouped through Mr. Young Alusas to be in one place, because some of us really come from backgrounds where you don't see yourself as anything. And that's the unfortunate part about it. But those programs that the university is having, like Ebuhlanti, seek to encourage us to build confidence, as you say in your class, that you try to engage and beg for engagement so that people can be confident in any way, you know. So those are the initiatives that the university has in partnership with the SRC, and we hope that in the near future we'll be able to advertise them so that young boys don't get be affected by what you are raising here. So we have those initiatives running, and we hope that it's not something that we speak about at Mandela in the near future. Thank you.
And lastly, to me, as you respond to the Fanon question, I'd like to also touch on how does decolonization look in your department, and the question of language as well, as you lecture.
Thank you for the question. So the way I interpret Fanon's pose on the violence of decolonization, for me, I see it as not so much as a violence, but as an encounter with the dominant narrative, whereby once a silent, subjugated, marginalized narrative now has opportunity to confront that dominant code. So for me, it's a case of just open up, decentering the dominant knowledge production, which allows more subjugated, local, African, indigenous knowledge systems into the curriculum. And through that position, at least, from what I've observed, at least, I probably should just open this up, is that through a blend, through a hybrid blend of engaging with these two codes. We have this dominant, in this case would be emerging timber construction, as it is a forward construction methodology being pushed by the world as it is a answer to the climate change question around where construction industry emits over 37% of carbon emissions. With that itself, by allowing indigenous local materials to merge and converge with that, it opens up a more authentic, culturally rooted architectural expression, which makes sense in our climate. So at least that's how I am engaging with that, is whereby we are allowing a plural set, whether it might be any That's at least my approach towards that. And in the case of language, for me, I believe in peer-to-peer learning. I believe in this idea whereby I'm here to give my students the tools to understand. And for me, I like to do this because we have a different setup. We are crits. So we are around each other and we're engaging on whatever you have on the table. And I think, for me, how I evaluate understanding is asking a student to engage with a particular project. And through that engagement, that opens up that engagement, that interest, that fight. So for me, that's how it comes out, as they're naturally communicating in a way in which they understand each other effectively. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that is our conclusion, ladies and gentlemen. As we become this Mandela, that is this university that is embedded on what our understanding of a transformative Mandela, may you embedded in class, in student activism, in your various disciplines. Thank you, Dumi. Thank you, Latita. Thank you, Snetazegile and Kama. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.